So we have seen the detailed explanation of DevOps manual and DevOps automated. So now we will look into the each stage of DevOps and what type of tools that we use. What are all the tools that are available in the market? And we'll look into the each of that ahead. So we'll begin with, so in development phase, we'll begin with the IDEs. So these are uh, basically development environments. These are development environments. Now, the most famous one, even I really like it, IntelliJ IDEA, IntelliJ IDEA. So this IDEA, IntelliJ IDEA is very helpful when you're writing AML scripts and all, and even for the Kubernetes. Of course, everybody has their plus points and negative points. Whereas in ops, I go with IntelliJ. Whereas during development, I go with the Visual Studio and Eclipse and PyCharm. So Atom, NetBeans, AWS Cloud9, CodeBlocks, Jupyter Notebook is one more. So these are all famous ones. These are all famous development environments where you can install plugins and it helps a lot. So then we will move on to the other stuff. So once you develop your code, you have to push it to the version control systems or source code manager. So basically, of course, you will push this into the some GitHub. But before that, if you have to push this code or if you have to pull that code, to make everything, make these things possible, you need some source code manager or version control systems. The famous tool is Git. The famous tool is Git, and then Bitkeeper is the one which is enterprise level. Then we have a subversion. Like this is the maybe 6 to 7 years back. It was very famous. And then GNU Arc, Monotone, Concurrent Version System, CVS. This was also famous long back. And Visual Studio Team Foundation. This is also famous. And these are some of the tools that we use. Then you have written the code, you have developed the code, then you used a uh, Git version control system to push it, but you need some repository where all the developers can push or pull the code. So that's what we call it as a code repository. The most famous one and widely used everywhere is a GitHub. In addition to that, there are other types, basically SourceForge, Snipple, Snippetmania, Snipped, so PHP, Snips.js, Snips Code project. These are all other code repositories. So then what we have is static code analysis. Basically to do unit tests, we need to have some tool. So that's we call it as a static code analysis. The most famous tool, even I really like it and I widely use it because as a machine learning engineer, we require a tool for Python and also Java, JavaScript all together. So SonarQube is the one which is compatible with Python, PHP, Java, JavaScript, and so on. In addition to that, we use Visual Expert and Code Sonar, PMD, Deep Scan, PVS. So that's it about static code analysis. Then we will move on to the unit testing tools. These are specifically used for unit testing. Snowpark, this is for Python, widely used. Mocha is for JavaScript. Simple test is for PHP. Emma is for Java. And C and C++ and C++ and .NET, these tools are a little far away from my my reach because I don't use much. Basically, we work on Python, Java, these kind of tools only. So then we will move on to the build tools. So from code is developed, then pushed into the GitHub repository, then it's been tested, unit testing is being done. Then what left is building the artifact. Let's take as a Java example, because ours is health issues app, which is written based on JavaScript and Node.js, React.js, and MySQL database and other tools. So now we need some tools to build the artifact, to create an archive. So that tool widely we use is Maven for Java, and Apache Maven for Java, and Python and PyBuilder for Python. In addition to that, we have Gradle, Apache, Ant. These are also very famous tools, and Scala-oriented build tool SBT. Then all set. Now your artifact is ready. It's been tested for units, and what left ahead is uh, publishing this artifact that has been built using Apache Maven into a server. That's what we call it as artifact registry or package manager server. For that, you have to configure that server with some install some a package manager tool. So the most famous tool is Nexus, that I used a lot during my projects day in and day out. So Nexus is the famous one. In addition to that, some enterprises will go with the IBM Urban Code Deploy also, but that's little costly. That's expensive. And in addition to that, if you use a Azure cloud, we have Azure artifacts and AWS artifact. Everybody has their own artifacts, but the most widely used tool is Nexus ProGet IBM Urban Code Deploy. That's called IBM UCD. Then Helix artifacts. So now our archive or artifact has been published into the artifact registry. Then what ahead is, now we will go for the full blown testing. That is, we will set up the test environment, and we have to install the following one of the following tools so that we can do the tests as written by the test cases. So Selenium is the famous one for the testing, whereas SonarQube is famous for the static code analysis, whereas full-blown unit test or full-blown component test, we use Selenium. This can be used in testing web applications, supports Java, Python, Ruby, Groovy script, and JavaScript. It supports most of the scripts that are available presently in the market. So that is the reason I prefer Selenium. We use Selenium also. APM is one more tool which is widely used for the Python. PyTest is specifically used for the ML applications. In addition to that, we have other tests, Sahi API testing, and Postman. Postman is also used for the API testing. Then there are more tools in testing, that is Postman API and Gatlang, Gon, GonTLT, QUnit. It is famous for Java Query and Java Query user interface and Java Query mobile. Basically, in mobile applications, QUnit is famous. And then Cucumber and TestNG. These are the famous tools in testing in to install in a testing environment. Then, as I told you, so as the tests are going on, and it has to send back the feedbacks, and after testing is done, while the whole system is going on, you have to get the feedback. You have to monitor what is happening, and you have to monitor the whole automated ecosystem's performance. To all those things, you require a tool. Okay, that tool, what we call it as a monitoring and feedback tools. The most famous tool is Nagios. Nagios is the most famous tool that offers server application and network monitoring capabilities. That means, see, in our DevOps ecosystem, we will have plenty of servers. Plenty of servers. We will have testing environment, staging environment, and artifact registry, Jenkins automation server, Maven server. Will have a lot of servers. So we should have a tool that can monitor server, that can monitor application, that can monitor networking, that can monitor uh, artifact registry, everything. So Negios is the famous one. After that, the Prometheus, the benefit of Prometheus is it can also do monitoring for all the above things that we have mentioned. But in addition to that, the Prometheus comes up with a graphical display. It clearly displays everything, so it's visually appealing. So that's the reason these Negios and Prometheus are the famous tools. In addition to that, we will have a Splunk, Elasticstack, ELK, Big Panda, App Dynamics, Cavo, Search, and Jabix. These are the other tools that we use it. Then what we have ahead is infrastructure as code. Now, till now, we have seen most of the things have been covered. We have reached to the development and then deployment and then deployment stage. So now it's time to just look back. So the question that I ask you is, see, we are talking about the provisioning and configuring the servers for the various applications. But who does this? How can we do that? How can we automate that? Normally, a system admin, every time we request for a server, he will set up the server. That's what we call it as a provisioning the server. And after that, he will install the required tools in it, so that it's called as configuring the server. Once it is provisioned and configured, then we can use it successfully in our processes. But Hey, can we automate it? Can we automate all these things? Yes, we can do it. That's what we call it as an infrastructure as a code. Ahead sessions, we will dive deep into this. What is infrastructure as a code, and what all scripts that we use, and what is imperative, and what is declarative script. All those things we are going to look in the coming fourth slides. So you don't go anywhere, just follow the slides. That's it. And here in infrastructure as a code, IAC, we call it as IAAC. So IAC. So now we will first see scripting types. Bash is for Linux, Bash, and PowerShell is for Windows, and command prompt is also for Windows, and Debian based Linux terminals and RMP based Linux terminals are also there. Bash, sh, and kvo sh. These are all other types. These are part of shell types, but there are different types in Linux too. So these are all scripting types. Everyone will have their own scripting. And now, to provision the infrastructure, to create a server, we in spite of doing manually, we can do it using certain tools. The most famous tool in that is Terraform. It's a Terraform, the most famous tool. And in addition to that, we have Azure Resource Manager and Google Cloud Deployment Manager, AWS Cloud Formation, and OpenStack Hit. These are all the tools which can be used to provision infrastructure automatically without a need to creating server and then installing and all those things. Without that, you can completely automate the provisioning of the infrastructure using IAC, using the tools that I have mentioned just now. Then we will look into the more functions of the IAC. So initially we have seen the shell scripts. Now we will see declarative type languages. There are different declarative type languages that are used basically in Terraform, Vagrant, Ansible, Azure, ARM template, PowerShell, DSC, Puppet, Chef. So these are all certain tools who where we can use a declarative language and then configure or provision the servers. And then we have templating the server configuration. That is Packer. That's the Packer. So HashiCorp Packer, and then Emulator or Vagrant. So here what happens, you write a script. We will do with the Vagrant anyway, we are going to use. Even Packer also we are going to use in coming forward slides. And so Vagrant, you write a script, you just download the file from the internet, and if you execute that Vagrant, it automatically creates a virtual machine. That's the powerful. That's how you use a vagrant to template the server configuration. Even you can add what all tools you want to install inside that server. It will automatically install. This is called the configuration. This is what we call it as a templating the templating the server configuration. Now, configuring the infrastructure. To configure the infrastructure, we have plenty of tools. The famous tool is Ansible, and then Chef, Puppet, SaltStack, PowerShell DSC, CF Engine, Rack HD, Juju, Cobbler. Cobbler is also famous tool, but more most widely used tools are Ansible, Chef, Puppet. Then we have container orchestration. Before that, we should have looked into the Docker. Okay, that's fine. So now there are few tools which makes containers, that is Docker and other kind of tools. But whereas we have container orchestration tools that actually make microservices concept possible. Uh, so Kubernetes is the famous one, and then Docker Compose for the low level, Docker Swarm is all low level, Minikube is for the testing, but production level Kubernetes cluster can be get from the Docker KubeADM and then COPS of AWS, whereas Minikube is only used for the testing purpose, just for exploring Kubernetes. That's it. And Marathon containership and AZK GKE, that's a Google Kubernetes, Azure Kubernetes Service AKS, and Amazon Web Services EKS, and Nomad. These are the famous tools which are used for the container orchestration. Then what we have ahead is the containerization. That's what I was saying. So the containerization. So there is a concept called, inspired of deploying that application in a specific server or in a virtual machine or instance. What you can do is, in that instance you can create a plenty of servers, and then sorry, plenty of containers, and you can deploy your application using container also. For the container, the most famous tool is Docker, and after that we have OpenVZ, Hyper-V containers, LXD, and Rocket, and Windows Server containers. This is specific to the Windows. However, the Docker is the most widely used tool, so we are also going to work with Docker only. We are going to spend huge amount of time in Docker, because these days Docker is the most famous tool, and most of the recruiters are looking for the person who knows Docker. I'm specifically talking about the data scientists who should know Docker. Then we will move on to the automation tools. So now whatever activities we wanted to automate, whatever tasks that are there, we want to automate. If you want to make all these tasks automated, the only you need certain tools, the intermediary tools who can communicate with all the servers and all the tools, and make this activity possible. So those tools are called automation tools. The most famous tool is Jenkins. Then after that, GitLab CI. GitLab CI is another famous tool. I saw most of my friends using this, but we are using Jenkins. Then Azure DevOps and Bamboo is another tool which is famous. Then Circle CI. This is also famous tool. Circle CA and AutoRabbit, and some use IBM Urban Code Deploy, that has a capability for continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous deployment too. However, in this course, we are going to explore a lot about Jenkins. We are going to spend huge amount of time on Jenkins, because these days most of the recruiters are looking for a data scientist who knows continuous integration and continuous delivery pipeline concept, as well as containerization concept. So that is the reason I request most of the data scientists to follow this course religiously. Then we will move on to the web servers. So web servers, everyone will have their own purpose. Apache Tomcat server is widely used for hosting the Java application. Nginx can be used as a load balancer or web application server. And Flask is a Python framework server. JBoss, Microsoft IIS, Glassfish, and each have their own purpose, and each will help in hosting certain types of applications.